just got an email today from Ruth. She
Yeah.
said, why didn't you print the whole thing? So I told her. She said, how interesting. She'll call
I've got now
Har-Di.
the whole thing because he sent it to me.
Okay.
It's in the other things that he goes
Right,
all
and I
stronger.
figured, oh boy, he
What
must
was
have gotten
Well,
worse.
about my marriages and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
boy.
Ruth said she'll call Haaretz.
Huh?
Ruth said she'd call Haaretz.
Good.
And get the full thing, send
The
it to
rest.
me, and I'll send it out to
Wonderful.
again. What a great article.
Check beforehand.
Yeah, I'll see how bad it is.
All right. Listen, the point that I have about this is I'm glad that he's spelling it out and then it'll be done, rather than Oy Gewalt, between the, where was he in the second marriage, where was he in the third marriage, all that stuff. Okay.
So if your LSD trip changed the face of American Judaism, if the Rebbe had said yes,
Hey, I'm sorry. I would get up and walk over to give
But
you a
he's
hug.
wired.
But I'm already
He's wired for sound.
Okay.
Life is irresistible. I couldn't.
I'm delighted. Gebencht das zu sein. Gut gebencht, ja, dir. May the Shechina and all the good rabbis shine through you and bring you parnassah and recognition and good health. But no more.
Publishers, agents.
give heed to the sound.
Here we go.
We're having a private show this morning.
Wow.
You fit? It's good because last night we went back and forth. Do we go? Do we go? We have Yom Kippur to prepare. Do we go? What do we do?
This is the
We said, oh,
preparation.
we'll go. We'll get
All right,
inspired.
people. I just need to bring up a couple of things with you. Who was not here last week?
I was not here.
Okay.
I had meat.
There is a slicha for Aseret Yemei Tshuva, which is very beautiful, by Yitzchak ben Gayat, Yehuda ibn Gayat. And I just want to read you a couple of lines of the Hebrew, and then I'll read you my translation, and you can copy it on later on if there's a good reason you want to use it. We'll get to the Nigunim later. Eilcha ve'ashuva el ishi harishon, asher me'az netzarani ki'ishon, bachur ka'arazim tehilato, b'chol hashon, b'zochri bo, eneni maniach li lishon. All the other people who have written slichas write in such a way that you need to have not only a dictionary, but how could it ever get to the heart when you have to do so much hitting of what did they mean? No, what did they mean by that? Can't understand. An allusion to an obscure midrash is what makes a line for him. So if you look at some of the notes that you have, you see how difficult it is. He, on the other hand, writes a lot more to the heart and from the heart. Good poet. So here's my translation. I must return to my very first lover. Like an eye's pupil, he kept me safe. You hear the line Kevabat Shomreim in there. Yeah. Tall is my beloved like a cedar. I can't sleep when I think of him. How he rescued me from vile hands. How he wed me in all new robes, speaking to me in holy words, honoring me with sacred pact, endowering me with ample boon amidst many joys, delight supreme, our tryst he stocked for intimacy, countless lasses in waiting he set to serve me, the choicest foods to fulfill his pledge. In his inner chambers he cleaved to me, while in the courtyards they spiced the air. My royal lover took me into his chambers, and I, bathed to purity, my scent arousing, he mounted our couch, and between my breasts he laid, embraced me and held me. And in a wink of an eye it happened, all broken, betrayed, as I went off, with attitude defiant, mocking and dazed. My lover, now disengaged, was gone, my guts wrenched, keening for my dear one. What was it that I upset? What drove him away? He is gone now, and no comfort has left me. How I sought him to no avail, called him to no response. Do turn back, my lord, I wailed. Had he gone, and he had gone, and I waited in hope, in and I waited in vain hope while my heart cried like a sad violin. Let me read that one again. How I sought him to no avail, called him to no response. Do turn back, my Lord, I wailed. He had gone, and I waited in vain hope while my heart cried like a sad violin. My eyes in tears that do not dry, I lost my dignity, I felt degraded, besmirched, defiled, foul and dirty, thrown, tossed about and despised. Like a young widow, I hoped for the day of comfort. My vulnerable need has turned to frustration. Flames of longing have become a wall. Oh, mercy. Please, for one not pitied. The response from Hashem comes. Come back, O Shulamit. Freed from hurt, from your desolation, your Maker seeks to behold you. Come quick. Lift your feet, swiftly come from Lebanon. We are reconciled. Arouse your love again. Your lover will restore you. And after they have made peace with each other, she says, you shall know clearly the face of your flock, Zion, the glorious grantor, the goodness of your desire. Your devotees will sing and acclaim the adventure. Yes, you heard my voice. You did not avert your ear. Isn't it a lovely... So if you want to copy both the Hebrew and the English later on and take it with you, that's yours.
You need to take a holy cold shower after hearing it.
Well,
Whoa.
it is wonderful what he does.
When was that written?
1038 he was born.
Wow.
So what was it?
It's
Just
like Wumi.
but what's the word you violin?
Oh,
Kinnor?
we'll take a look if you want.
Use
that.
Kinnor.
He's asking, is this, should I have said the Rebab?
What do
That
they
his
call
voice
that?
came to me.
What do they call it?
Anachronism.
Is that when you're
Because it's before the violin.
right?
So it'd be like a lute or a harp, possibly. Another stringed instrument.
Alai libi kekinori heme.
It is Kinnor.
Okay. When was the violin invented?
Well, but maybe
Well,
Kinnor
Kinnor
then
shel
meant something
David.
different.
What
That's
you know,
right.
it may have been
It's
a
a harp.
cantilena with 7 strings.
Right.
Because it says that his was 7, Mashiach will come,
Right.
will be 8 strings.
Right.
It's la 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 la.
And
Before Mashiach comes.
yeah, I know.
When Mashiach comes, it's la.
This is so contemporary that the road to God, metaphorically, is through the deepest understanding of the romantic relationship.
Yeah.
You know? That, I mean,
So
he's
I'll
practically saying it, you know? That through the divine sexuality, that's like the opening of the first hay, you know? And so it's very, very avant-garde.
And it's a secret for most people. They don't know that this exists with us, so that's why I want you to have it. I wrote a letter to the Pope.
Good.
All right.
And I don't have the copy here at this point.
And I'm sorry, but you know, somewhere in my old computer was the letters I wrote on your behalf to the Dalai Lama, to the mother, to Pir Vilayat Khan, and to Gurmai. I think that was it. There might have been a 6th.
You talk
That
a little
was 10
louder,
years
please.
ago.
I heard you this time, but I don't have my ears in while I'm talking because it's
Right.
drive me crazy.
Right.
So early I had written one to Pope Paul, and I couldn't find this letter, but it was saying something like this: you're concerned about your people, and it's really important that you start looking at the great loss that has happened in home piety. Hardly anybody of the Catholics today is doing a daily morning thing. You know, it's like I'm talking to Jews, I'm talking to him. And when it comes to sitting around the table and giving thanks and doing grace, people don't do it anymore, nor do they do something before they go to sleep. And that, more than anything else, more than any encyclical, is going to create that if you can bring this about. And I would suggest that you start doing this with your own household. And then perhaps get videotaped how you do this with a family, a simple family in Rome, and show to the whole world so that the other Catholics will be able to see and bring back that kind of daily piety. And so finally, the Secretariat of State from the Vatican, dear Rabbi Schachter-Shalomi, His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI has received your kind letter and has asked me to thank you for your thoughtful observations. He very much appreciates your concern for the renewal of personal piety beginning in the home. His Holiness assures you of a remembrance in his prayers. He cordially invokes upon you the divine blessings of joy and peace. Now that's a very nice response. The last time I got a response, it was not so nice. Now, I got good stuff to learn here today from the Siva Sholem. But there is something that I would like to really lay out about Yom Kippur that I haven't had an opportunity to lay out that way. So I'm gonna stop this and take another one and do the same with this guy here so that I can have a
different track.
A different chapter, as it were, yes.
The Yom Kippur one.
Yeah, and okay, here we go. First a niggin. Darkecha Elokeinu Leha'arich Apecha La'arayim ve'latovim Vehi tehilatecha Darkecha Elokeinu Leha'arich Apecha La'arayim ve'latovim V'tehilatecha Le'mancha Eloheinu aseh Ve'lo elanu Re'yei amidateinu Dalim v'rekim. So the big pasuk, if you ask which is the key pasuk that we use, for Shabbos it's V'shamru, what we call out after Hashkivenu, and Vaydaber Moshe et Moadei Hashem el Bnei Yisrael, the sense that the Yom Tovim come from God, and Tiku B'cho the shofar for Rosh Hashanah, and Bayom
Ki bayom hazeh.
Ki bayom hazeh yechaper alechem letayr etchem mikol chatotechem lifnei Hashem titharu. So this pasuk has been the takeoff pasuk for many a Rebbe when they were teaching about Yom Kippur. The question for us is, first of all, to find out where is it located, where is Yom Kippur located on the chart. So we've had that thing in the Eitz HaZman, where that's the thing that I had written about the tree in time, that Yom Kippur is in Keter, and Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days are in Chochmah and Bina, and Pesach is Chesed, etc. Okay. The sense that I've gotten from the readings of Chassidus and from experience is Ki vayom hazeh yechaper aleichem, he enters into the day. So they say the day Yom Kippur has 26 hours, you add one before and one after, like on Shabbos. So it is like saying God becomes incarnate in time. Why is that necessary? And here is a real issue that people who are trying to be monotheists from a rationalistic point of view never get to understand, which is that there is a Shiur Koma. There is a ladder, if you will, of where the range of life, where the range of reality is. And so they expect that you always, when you're talking about Hashem, that you talk about Ein Sof right here. And that doesn't make any sense, and that's what's troubled Onkelos when he saw Vayeret Hashem al Har Sinai. So he said Ve'itkali. He makes himself manifest here, but he's here all along, and it's not like moving and so on and so forth. But you have to understand that there is, just as we have levushim, so there are the melech, basor levushim. It is one of the chants that we have on Yom Kippur. Hitazar b'kedoshim, etc., etc. So it comes out that there are levushim for Hashem, just as the levushei nefesh. So when you speak of yechida, chaya, neshama, ruach, nefesh, machshava, dibur, maaseh, you get a sense of the shiur koma of reality in us. So when we understand that we have a year and that God gives us a year, it means that He gives us a name. That every year a new name comes down. So when we say B'Shem Hashem, always the Shem Hashem, and sometimes use the word Kavod, and there's some people who wanted to make the distinction that Kadosh is how the Rebbeinu Shalom is, but Kavod is how we feel it here. So that is an effulgence, something that is lower than that. Okay, so it is that shame that is suffering more than anything else, because when you say that God is impassible, nothing can harm Him, can touch Him, that is about atzmus. But the shame is a different story. V'hu mecholel p'psha'enu. Our sins make holes in Him. The point that the sins make hole in Him is a very important one, because you hear the word Chilul Hashem from Halal, no cave Shem Hashem, you hear the word Nekev in there, and there is a bleeding off. That which should go to Kedusha is going to Sitra Achra as a result of that. And at the end of the year, just like Lahavdil, in a furnace that is an air-pushing furnace, you have to put the filters, clean the filters. So the Mikdash had to be cleaned. If you look first, in the first description that is in Vayikra about Yom Kippur, it says that he has to go and clean it's almost as if the filter for this world had been clogged from all these things, which is the opposite of Vehu Mecholel B'Psha'enu. In other words, Mecholel is making holes in, clogged is the other thing. Both of them mean that it's not working like a good membrane should work. That's the point. So comes Yom Kippur, a new name has to be brought in, and that's the secret they tell about why the Kohen Gadol has to go into the Kodesh Kodeshim. And you have already mentioned in the Dibuk story, it begins in Reb Nachman, but begins early in the Gemara, that the Asara Kedushot, Esa Kedoshot. And there are, Eretz Yisrael has 10 levels of holiness in which the Kodesh Kodeshim is the greatest. Time has 10 levels of holiness in which middle of the day of Yom Kippur is the greatest. And person, nefesh, so we have talked about Mokim and about Olam and Shana, and now talking about nefesh, it's the Kohen Gadol. So there are all kinds of Balei Chayim, and then there are human beings, and then there are Jews, and there are Leviim, and then there are Kohanim, and there's a Kohen Gadol, and here's the Kohen Gadol. There are all kinds of words, and you have words that are bad words, curse words, and what have you, as he calls them Kabali, like that kind of a bad And that means making that kind of a hole, yeah, so that the hashpoeh for that person should no longer come. And that's what Bilam wanted, what Balak wanted Bilam to achieve, that he should block the hashpoeh of the divine to down there. So no kev Shem Hashem and kavali et ha'am. And then the highest level is the name that the Kohen Gadol recites at that point.
Now, the Kohen recited the name of God every day, correct?
Yeah, but in the Kodesh Kodeshim they say something else was happening. And we don't know yet what that was.
Right.
Because if you go with everything that's woven around it, a Shem of 72 letters, all kinds of things that are being said, and the Shem Amfoirish, and he forgot it when he came out, and the people, although they heard it and they fell down, they forgot it. You get the sense that it blew them out, and they know, I heard the name, but I don't remember.
Is it possible that during the rest of the year, the Kohen Gadol recited or said the name?
Oh, it says clear in the Mikdash. He said Yud Kei Vav Kei, the way we have it, with the pronunciation that we don't know.
Right, but on Yom Kippur, isn't it possible that it didn't come out of his mouth, but came from God and entered his
Well,
mouth?
that's the point. The point that they're making is the Kohen Gadol ra'ui to this or not? And the second Beis HaMikdash, things were not so happy.
Right.
And when I looked back to the first Beis HaMikdash, was also not so happy. So we have an ideal Beis HaMikdash in which the ideal Kohen Gadol was that kind of a keli for the Ratzon Hashem that it came through clearly. Okay, so he says like da 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 Mare Kohen, all the things that they have to say about the Kohen. Okay, the point of that is that when in the highest space and in the highest time and the highest person would recite the highest ever word, that there was such a union coming together, that this is the at-one-man thing. So that there was another way of saying that at that moment, what had to happen about the issuing of the new name, a willingness of the divine to be, to forgive, and to scrap the old sins with the old name. And so, why is that Yom Kippur can be mechaper? Because it can do that. We'll have to talk about many meanings of Kippur in a moment, okay? Just when we were talking about the holes in the name, there is a story, and I promised I'll tell this story. It's a good story. It's Friday afternoon. No, it's Motzei Shabbat. And the Baal Shem Tov says to one of the young people who has come to be with him, who is sort of a yeke, coming from Germany, from Posen, and he is becoming one of his good Hasidim. He says, would you like to come with me on a journey to Posen? And he gets very excited. And he says, yes, of course. So Motzei Shabbos, they start out with the horses, and it goes 3-4 days, and it's Wednesday already. They haven't gotten anywhere. It's not Kfitzas HaDerech as usual. They're in the middle of a forest. And now it's Thursday, and they're still not there. Suddenly the horses stop, and there seems to be a pond, a little pond, with water running in and out, fresh water running in and out. And the Baal Shem Tov takes off his clothes right away and gets into the pond and dips into the pond and comes out. And the young man, so confused, doesn't know that he should do the same thing because he hadn't been briefed about it either. So they're traveling further, and he says, what was that? He says, you'll find out. The next day, it's already Friday by noontime, and it's getting really late. For Shabbos, you aren't yet in a town, and certainly not in Posen. And this young man wants to be, but his parents, he figures that's why the Baal Shem took him. And they stop in an old shack. And at that shack, the Baal Shem knocks on the door, and a man comes out. Oh, never. Wounds and sores and all kinds of sores he's got. And the Baal Shem Tov hugs him and kisses all the sores, goes with him into the room, and comes out, and they get into the wagon. What was that? The guy wants to know. He can't find out. So then they come, it's Friday, mamish, about a quarter hour before Lichtbenchen, and they're in Posen, and the horses go not to the Jewish section, but they go to a section that was a no-no for all Jews to be there. It's the Schülergasse. It's the street where the students have their dorms and so on and so forth. So no Jew is supposed to be there, and this young man screams, Rebbe, this is not, we're going to get clobbered, it's going to be terrible. He says, we didn't tell the horses before, we won't tell the horses now, they know where to go. Stops in front of a place, of a house, and behind the shutter somebody comes out and says, you shouldn't be here. The only reason why I, a tailor, can be here because the students bring me the suits that often in duels have been slashed and so on. And so I and my apprentices and my people here, we can fix these things, they leave us here, but if they'll see you, it's going to be terrible. He says, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be here for Shabbos. You are 8, we are now 10, and we're going to daven right here. Make sure that the horses are taken care of, and alongside the driver. And as soon as possible, he begins with a tallis standing near the window that leads out into the street, which is Mizrach, and he begins to daven, Har-Di L'Hashem Kitoiv, Kili Yoelam Chazdoi, the big hoda for the 4 who have gone through all kinds of tzoros. And before long, there are some kids outside, and they see this whole geschäft, this crazy thing that's going on, and they start making fun of them. At one point, one of them picks up a stone and throws it at the window where the Baal Shem is. It fell short, but the Baal Shem gives him a look, and the guy is on the floor. They don't know he's breathing, he's alive, but they don't know what to do with him. He's out. So they go across the street where one of the profs lived and knocked on the door and say to him, you'll tell him, Amitai the story if he doesn't know it, and say to him, a student is fainted, he says, let me see what's, they bring him in, put him on a sofa. He seems to be able to catch himself a little bit, but he is still, limited in movement. And the professor says, how did this happen? And they all tell him, we made fun of this Yidlak that's in there, and they're screaming like crazy, and they're making noises, and they look nuts. And so we made fun of them. And then the guy opened his eyes and looked at them, and he was, He says, stay away from this house. And anyone is going to get, they have a detention in colleges too called carcer, anyone who misbehaves, I will make sure that he'll be in carcer. You stay away from that house. And he goes across, knocks on the door, the tailor comes over, and he says to him, what can I do for you, Professor? It's Shabbos now. He says, don't worry, I'm going to come and sit on the side and protect the house. And let me just be here, and I will make sure no one is going to trouble you. Okay. They make Kiddush. The guy still sits, looks in his books and so on, just watches out. They make Kiddush. And Bam Tish, the Baal Shem Tov starts saying, how Reb Shlomo would say, a Gewalt Torah, an awesome Torah. And this young man from Posen, who didn't get to see his parents, says to himself, for whom is he saying this? It doesn't make any sense. For the tailor, he doesn't understand what's going on. Good, I'm going to try very hard to remember what he said and give it over when we come back to Mezhebish, but it's not usual. The same thing happens. The guy comes in the morning, he wants to find out when they begin davening, and he's there for the whole day, and then after Havdalah he leaves. So does the Baal Shem Tov. He goes into the wagon. The young man says, can I go and see my parents? He says, I said I'm going to take you to Posen. I didn't say I'm going to take you to your parents. We have to go. So they get into the wagon, and on the way back the young man asks, Rebbe, what was going on here? He says, 2 things I will tell you, and the third you'll find out. He says, it was the spring of Miriam, the well of Miriam, travels around the world. And I had to wait for the right moment when it arrives here so I could dip into that. And why did I have to dip in that? In preparation for the person I saw on Friday, who was the person that was Mashiach. He says, in every generation, he's here. Because in the case, be'ito achisheno, if there is that kind of moment of grace when everything melts away, that he shouldn't have to be born and start all over again. Who knows what's going to happen in between. So he is ready, and he's taking on in each generation the task of being that. But all our sins are the ones that cause him the pain. V'hu mecholel b'pesha'enu. I knew that he had finished serving his term on earth, and I went to thank him for having borne our troubles for all this time, and asked him to tell me who the new one is going to be. And he did. And that's it. More he doesn't tell. Years go by. This young man is by this time a very fine young man, and a Rov and a Rebbe and so on and so forth. And it happens, but he makes his living a lot more from being a merchant. So he travels in various places, and it turns out that he comes to a country and to a place where he has to do his business, and he gets anxious when Friday is, he can't make it back. And he doesn't know with whom he can be, and he asks around, is there a rabbi in this city? So he goes Erev Shabbos to the rabbi's house and asks for permission. He says, I'm a traveling Jew. I don't know on whom I can rely, with whom I can have a Shabbos and have some Divrei Torah and so on. So would you please allow me to be a guest? And so the guy says, you're welcome. They go to Shul to daven and sit at the Seudah, and this man begins to say Torah. And the Torah is the one that the Baal Shem Tov said that night. The guy he's out of his kelim, he can't understand what's going on. The same for Shabbos noon, the same later on happening for Shalashidus. So by Malav Malka he says, this is impossible. How could it be that you should verbatim give over those teachings of the Baal Shem Tov that I heard years ago? He says, because you don't recognize me. I'm the professor. He says, I had 3 questions because I was teaching Bible, Old Testament, all these things. And there remained 3 questions in my mind about whether I should convert or not convert. And when the Baal Shem came and said these Torahs, in each Torah he answered one of my questions. So that's a wonderful mindset, okay? But it illustrates also the issue of V'hu mechol b'psha'enu, and that a new name is needed, okay? So it says about Sukkot, that on Sukkot we have the first day, Lekachtem lachem b'yom rishon. So it's not Yom Rishon, it's the 15th day of the month. Why does he call it Yom Rishon? So Rashi says, Rishon lecheshbon avonot. From that day on, you start counting sins. So the teaching from the Baal Shem comes like this, that the day after Yom Kippur, the Yud of the name comes down for the new year. And the second day, the Hey, and then the Vav, and finally the other Hey, so that the name is now complete. And so therefore, on the first day of Sukkot is Rishon lecheshbon avonot, from that time on. And these 4 days are called, among Hasidim, God's nomen, God's name. In other words, because the letters come down. All right, now I got to go back to what does it mean, how does, when we have Salach Lanu, Mechal Lanu, Kaper Lanu, so we know that there is such a thing as Salach Lanu, which is different than Mechal Lanu. And Salach Lanu, it gives the sense of, if you have done an Avera and right away you're sorry and you want to make and you make amends and so on and so forth, it never sinks deeper than it needs salach. And you've gotten salach and you're finished, okay? On the other hand, when it comes to mechal, it's already different. Because to be mochel speaks about a debt. I have incurred a debt. There's something that I have to repay to the universe. Sometimes it's so that I can't do this. So I'm saying, Rabbeinu Shalom, you pay for us, mechal lanu. But mechal also has a sense, bein odam lachavero, has a sense of a dance. You know, I'm in the place of the person whom I hurt. And then the charotet and whatever comes that I have to fix gets straightened out because I see what I need to do, I take care of it, and that handles mechal lanu. When you do tshuva out of yira, you make it up to mechal lanu. But kapar lanu hasn't really happened. What's going on here? Because kaper means, first of all, to wipe. Bechavarto b'bayit u'mechutz b'chemer, you know, when it says about Moshe Rabbeinu's little sal. So it means to shmir. It also means to wipe something off. It also means to ransom. And it also means to deny. The word kofer comes in, okay? So you can see how many levels they're involved in the issue of kaporet. The element sometimes that you find of how does the Rabban Shalom have to do kaporet, and one way he describes it, the issue with the egel and the pora aduma. Remember when they're talking about egel and pora aduma, they start saying this thing about the mother has to come to make up for the sin of the child. You know, the heifer is the one who takes care of what the egel made wrong. Okay. So you have a sense sometimes of wiping off the dirt, the schmutz. A mother diapering a baby is doing a kapor on the tush, you know, and does this kind of cleaning up. Okay. The other thing is also the great story about Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, who is standing at Le'el Har-Di and has an aliyat haneshama. And as the Satan starts bringing Averis, he grabs those bundles of Averis and throws them into Gehenna, where they get burned up. So with the last bundle, when Satan comes, he says, "Where are all my bundles?" And they're now in Gehenna, they're burnt up. So he says, it's you, Levi Yitzchak. V'nimkar b'gneivato, you belong to me. Okay? So Michael starts bidding for him, you know, I'll ransom him. Finally, the Rabbeinu Shalom says, I ransom him. At which point, Satan can't say anything more. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak comes to Lekone Avadav Badin. The Rabbeinu Shalom brought him at this time out, okay? You get the sense of... Then comes the issue that goes with the Sa'ir La'azazel. One of the things that comes up with Sa'ir La'azazel is that most people misspell it. They take Azazel, but it's not spelled this way. It's spelled Ez Azal. Mm-hmm. It's Ein, Zayin, Aleph, Lamed.
Zayin, Lamed.
Okay? So you have, what does it mean? Where does that thing come from? So Professor Dinur goes back to early meanings and says it's Eis Azilu. a goat that gets set free, to go. Azal in Aramaic is to walk, to go off. So from my perspective, and this is not what you need to bring to a congregation, but from my perspective, the issue of the Azazel comes from early cultural issues that come with the domestication of animals and land. When the first Cain and Hevel are not described as hunter-gatherers as we usually hear, that they precede agriculture and animal husbandry. On the contrary, the Chumash later on makes the hunter-gatherers to be later on children of Cain, and not the beginnings of that. But one thing is clear: where did Cain and Hevel, and let me take it as big metaphorically, get the notion that they have to offer a sacrifice? Because they changed something from the wild structure. So in order to make the god feel that we have made reparation, we are offering an animal, okay? There is an element also that comes with sending something away from out of our camp. Because if you look at the bird of Metzora, one bird was killed and the blood was sprinkled on the Metzora, and the other was set free to fly away. So there is a sense of giving something back to the world alive. From a utilitarian point of view, it meant also that you would be able to continue to interbreed the wild and the tame. By sending one of these off, then he would also mate with the others, and so the strain would not separate out. Now, that this should have to happen on Yom Kippur comes with the same situation as to why the bird had to be sent out. On these shamanic things, try and explain anything, it doesn't work. But somehow we have the feeling that you can't put something on them, because the Kohen had to put Visvada, and he had to put the sins on there. And the same thing when they took the bird and made it go around the Metzora and then sent it off. There is something about kapora, ze kaporosi, this kind of thing that we are dealing with. So, having said that, I want to go into the work of Yom Kippur. What has to happen? So, the night the Kol Nidre thing doesn't yet have a place where it's gotten to the top, where it's just taking off. And then it should come back, so there's a rising up. The next morning, when I first did the Yom Kippur at Essel in San Francisco in 73, and then there were, I don't know if you can imagine some of the people, the meditators, the whole chevre there that were with their zapus and little altars. I asked them to bring something from their home altar is there, and so they were all arrayed in that room. And the night before, we went out to the lake that's around. They have a pond there at what's the name of the street? No, 6th Street, the Helmet Club. And we sat around the pond, and everybody had to go and say to the other person, I had described to them that Gulliver is tied with too many little strings and he can't move. These are guy wires that pull him into all kinds of situations that aren't necessarily their freedom. These are the Nadarim. If I were to say functionally, what are the Nadarim? The Nadarim are the ones that keep me in a specific way of relating to a specific person. And sometimes when you have experienced what it goes when two different situations pull at you, and how you get distorted on the inside, how difficult that is. So I asked the people to say, I'm committed to this. And the other person would say, Mutalach. I'm committed to that, Mutalach. So that by the time they had made, and I gave them enough time to be able to make an inventory of all the things they needed to be free, so that on Yom Kippur they could be freestanding as to who they really are before any Nedarim, okay? Then on Yom Kippur morning, I asked them to check out how do they feel about their conceptualizer, analyzer, and reality tester. In which I was saying, do your work checking out. Do you feel that your Chochmah bin Avadas are calibrated the right way?
Mm-hmm.
When you see there are some thoughts that you may not think, let's say a yeshiva bocher, this is a treif posel thought, you mustn't think that, and lots of time people don't even think of it, right? But at this point, you're free from that in the morning. You're not tied anymore from the other places. How would you like to be able to conceive of reality? Do you see reality? Do you understand it? And the second way, the analyzer, Bina. How do you see it working out? And so we sat in quiet and did this homework. And then I asked them, are you satisfied with your reality tester? Or is your reality tester bribed? When I start looking at all the FDA, and I ask myself, they have to test the different kind of drugs and so on and so forth, and how bribed they are, how meshubet they are, So is that clear? For Musaf, I asked them to check out the Chesed Gvurah Tiferet. In other words, what are the attractions in your life? What repels you and what gives you the strength to resist? And how do you have integration and compassion in your heart and your feelings? So that was a strong one, too. And each time I had people after they did it to go into dyads with each other and process that and to say, no, I'm not satisfied with the way I find I have attractions that I don't want, or I feel numb and I'm not attracted. I don't have any feelings, and I need to do something about it. So people talked about that. Came to Minche, I had him go into Nesachot Yesod. Well, the Kriyas HaTorah is in Yesod. There's no question about that. And Netzach and Hod is the struggle in which Miyomin and Mismol Yenikas HaNeviim, and you get into them after Yonah, and that kind of struggle between the Netzach of it and the Hod of it and the forgiving and so on. And all this, now you have your mind, your feeling stuff, and your functioning stuff. And in the Ila, we did Balchut, and that was to sit again with your first person who has done your first Mutarloch, and go back and say, and I accept upon myself my commitment to my wife, to my children, and you go and all the commitments that you feel you have. And there are some that you might say, and these I don't want to accept anymore. I don't have a commitment to my mother anymore. She's gone, and I felt all the time that she was still pulling at my kishkis, and I don't want that. I want to be free. Okay. So then you get to the place of being able to say, all right, I don't want that karma anymore. I don't want that. But what do you owe the universe when you let go of that? Okay, what tikkunim do you have to make? For instance, if you say I don't want to have anything more to do with this person. How do you finish that relationship so it doesn't go on bleeding, you know? Like you cut it off, it bleeds. You have to really cauterize it in some way to be able to say, and this is over, and I forgive you, and please forgive me, and we got to be done with this, okay? So that was the way in which we did the Yom Kippur that year. And I wanted to tell it to you because I feel that in a way, once you get to see where the homework of Yom Kippur lies, then you can make appropriate things as to how you make your service move. Like Reb Shlomo said, I don't want to say bad things, but I was at Makom or Shalom, and it's just wonderful what he has done with the choir and how the enthusiasm that they have and how they sing. And Reb Dvorah is marvelous and is a great teacher and a good Mora d'Asra. And sometimes the service does not lead to anything. You know, it was a wonderful showcase for the choir, and the people really got off in the singing, and the people who heard it were okay with that too. But if I were to say, what do you need to achieve with the people, even b'ze'er anpin, you know, even if you can't get it to the fullest, but how would you create and build your service so that it would get to a place that by the time you come at the end of Yom Kippur, the Kippur process has happened.
The train stops in a station where it can happen.
Yeah. Now I'm going to put my ears in, and I'd like to hear from you things that have come up for you.
Well, somebody mentioned to Nadya yesterday, who was at our service, who's a wonderful critic,
Yes. Go on.
that for those who do as we have set up in the past, this is the first year that we didn't do an Elul retreat, where we had 25, 30 people come and learn how to do the process during the month, so that when we get to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you can do what you're talking about, and people have already done a certain amount of work. Preparation. So he said, I'll be so bold as to say, most of us don't do that work. So when we arrive for Rosh Hashanah, it's more important that you, meaning the two rabbis, this time the three rabbis, help us do that work, kind of like Evelyn would speed kapara.
Yeah.
Okay?
Why is it kapara? I don't understand.
Well, in the sense that all the stuff that was supposed to be preparatory wasn't done.
Yeah. So Evelyn Wood is fast reading learning.
Yeah. You're right. So it's so that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you have to compact it or condense it to get that done for all those people who didn't do the work leading up to it.
Yeah.
You have to accelerate their process.
Right.
And in my experience, I still believe it's the meditation and the visualizations, as well as the music, that can accelerate if they haven't done the work.
Right.
Because when you take them into the other dimension, then time isn't so important anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to reinforce that. There is the issue of yesh kone olamo b'sha'acha. When it comes to turning on the pivot, it can happen to some people in that way. And you hear right now that this new judge that they have appointed, that he's putting forward, claims that she had that kind of a experience. In one moment she turned and made her commitment. And that can happen for the people because at best you are a catalyst for the inner process, and who knows what sorrows they have had, let's say, in mishpoche and in business and in other things, all of which were their preparation of saying, I can't go on the way I must make a shift. So
well, I think the finest example is what happened to Franz Rosenzweig right? And I remember that when I was at JTS, we had a Rosh Chodesh breakfast when Nachum Glotzer came to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm the one who asked the question, could you please tell us what happened to Rosenzweig?
Yeah.
And he goes, all right. So I continued, and I said, was it the davening? Was it the meaning of the prayers? Was it the sound of the chazan? And he goes, all right.
He was a very humble person.
Glotzer?
And Glotzer.
Oh, incredibly humble.
Unassuming, wonderful.
So so it reinforces that what must have happened was that, what do we call it, a revelatory moment, that transformational moment. Because he went in, very much of what you're saying could be applied to what he was on the path to doing. He was supposed to, at the end of Yom Kippur, make the conversion to Christianity. Right? So he was all hyped internally for
Absolutely. The conversation he had with Rosenstock-Hussey all along had to do with transformation, with spiritualization of a life. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Wonderful. What else? What comes up for you about music? Nadya Leben. To be that stirring for people.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking, but for me, all my life, music has been the only language that I know how to use to access, to rise to those levels. It doesn't, though I have to say that Reb Leah led us in a visualization on Rosh Hashanah Day, and because it's one of those rare moments where somebody else is leading something in on my watch, so to speak, that I don't have to hold the container, because I know she can hold it all by herself, so I could let myself enter into it.
Wonderful.
You know, such a gift to not have to still be holding and the visualization really there. You know, I had this profound moment of self-realization about something that Leah was guiding, and it was magnificent. But typically for me, the way I climb, the ladder, so to speak, or the way I reach the portal and the key that unlocks it is music for me. And it's because it fills every cell of my being. It's not just in my head, it's not just in the in the throat chakra, it's not just in the heart chakra, it fills every cell of my being.
Right.
And I believe that that's what happens for a lot of people who allow themselves to, because they can be flooded by the sound. And they don't have to know the meaning, or they don't. But all of it is kind of contained in that. It's a full body experience, and it opens the heart and and touches the soul.
Right. So you have removed the censorship of the head from that, because it says this is not for the head. Okay, I'll relax to that, and then it can take you.
Right.
Have you ever thought of using recorded music
In the service?
in the service?
No, it's interesting. We almost did.
I wanted very much, but Shaya didn't let me.
That's right. Dorit really wanted to use a piece from Sheldon Sand's CD.
Yeah.
But because the musicians knew how to play it, they decided to do it live rather than using
But
the
it didn't
recording.
achieve what the CD has.
Yeah.
Which the
Right.
CD
I
has.
also would like to teach people that it is kosher to listen to music from a meditative praying place. And when you do it with a kahal in this way, because most of the time when you play music, they want to talk to each other.
Right.
And when you can show them this is not for talking to each other, this is for going with that.
I mean, Alan Setcher
Yeah.
used to do that in Chicago.
Yeah.
He said, I can't sing.
Yeah.
So he was like a disc jockey at services, but he said that people felt like when you hear the primo artist, the music washes over. I can tell you that for me, because it was so, the most overwhelming experience was that first Shabbos that we went to the Aquarian Minyan as visitors. It was the first time I ever heard drumming in davening.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, drumming does it more, because drumming does exactly what Nadya said. There's no words. It's one of those times that I live too much in my head. Drumming gets me out of my head. I feel it. It's pulsating against my body. And if my pores are open enough, it goes right through. And it allows me to float. The restrictions, even with instrumentation, I may not be able to sing, but I have an excellent musical education from childhood on. And so a lot of times I hear the mathematics of the music. All right? Drumming doesn't have that. It crosses all that stuff out. So
So it takes your education away. Yeah?
Thank God.
There's an additional element.
Right.
The additional element is why, for instance, when the Roman soldiers came to a bridge, they broke step.
Right.
Because the rhythm that shared could break the bridge if they all...
Yeah.
Here, when you have the zigging... Go ahead. When you have the zigging and the zagging
Right.
happening with all the people there because of the drumming, when you get an entrainment of even brain waves that come at that point, and you entrain your brain waves, and the whole kahal does this together. It is originally the word telepathy didn't mean knowledge; it meant feeling.
Uh-huh.
Right? Patayim, to feel,
Right.
to feel over space. And when you see that, that's what in a good charismatic situation happens. That you build that common feeling among people, and from that,
For me to be in the truth in my heart, the leaders have to be in integrity. If there's too much focus on enrolling people in the congregation, then you sort of lose the Ruach HaKodesh in a way. So there has to be an integrity in how the service is being done. And to me, the perfection, the specifics are less important than whether that atmosphere exists.
what do I remember from davening with the Rebbe? Wasn't what he said, but tuning in through him to how he was Nochach Pnei Hashem. That's what did it. So if you're, as you were saying, if you have
Can't have too many agendas.
a shlo lishmo can't work in that situation.
Yeah.
To be the night, the second Maariv, I was with the people there, and we didn't daven from the siddur, but I did the whole Maariv sort of by heart as we stood in front of the Oren Kodesh, and in English, so that they could hear also along. But when I was saying, Uvechein tein, pachtecho, and Behofa v'hadar ge'onu zecha, and I could come from the place where I really wanted that. That was an important way of sharing. Okay, anything else? We still have
I would
10
like
minutes.
to share that tzniut, that about 8 to 10 people came up to me, and they said that the kavanah that I said in the beginning actually did exactly that for them. That's the first time they really opened up and they understood what the day is all about and prepared them for the whole day. So that was nice to hear that what I intended happened. And the other thing I wanted to tell Rabbi Zalman, that I did what you told me to do. I did the So We Pray.
The what?
The So We Pray from Hashir ve'Hashevach.
Yeah.
Yes, at the end of the Amidah.
Wonderful.
I don't know what effect it had or anything, but I did it because you told me.
Well, here, take one sheet from the top and one from the bottom.
Zalman, I have two more things.
That's fine.
Very quickly.
But I'm just making sure that
One
this
is,
goes
I
on.
want to give you another little
Yeah.
Misa, that in Big Sur, when they attract the condors, and I have a wonderful condor story, they tag the condors. So all of our condors have numbers and tags on them. And then they take some of the ones that have been tagged over to the pinnacles where there's some wild condors, and they release them so that we can have that interbreeding of the condors that have been hovering around people more and the ones that are totally free. And the idea is for them to be able to mate again. I went onto some website after I had a ecstatic experience with 3 condors to find out that they have been on the planet for millions of years. The ones that I saw had 9-foot wingspans approximately, and they originally had 17-foot wingspans. So one day we were going down to Big Sur to Esalen, and my friend, it was a spectacular day. The sun was just shining on the water, and he said, "We got to stop." But we never stop on the way. We have to stop. And we stopped in this very craggy place by the side of the road, and I looked down, and there was this huge condor, like 4 feet away from me. And he was just standing there. And I said, "Let's be very quiet, you know." And then he lifted off, and he went over our heads and spread out his wings. And then he went across the road and around the hill and came back. Then his mate joined him, the female, a little smaller. And then she did the dance over our head, across the road to the hill and back. And then the baby came up from the nest, which was down in the rocks of this particular crevice. And then the baby also flew over us and around. And we just, we stayed there for about, I'd say 20 minutes. And we took it as we were getting the bracha from the condors. Oh. And when I got home and told some friends, they said the condors were sizing us up for a meal. But I felt I had gotten condor, mojo.
Even if you were to listen to them, there is a moment where you say, "I'm willing to be eaten by a condor."
Yeah, I mean, it was, and they're black and white, and there's a little bit red. And when they were right over my head, I'm just looking up at them, and the only thing you can feel is the glory of God for such a creature.
Next, Cedric, Kanesha Yair Kino Al Gozalav Yirachev. You have it right there. Really? And there is a thing going on between Native American people from the north and from the south called the eagle and condor work. Yeah. And shamans are trying to do what they can to heal the planet. It's amazing. Yeah, you said there were 2 things.
Yes, the other is, I don't know if you have time, but there's a piece of Zohar that I've been working on, and I got Dorit into this act last night, that talks about the notion of there being 4 Shekhinot. The Shekhinah in each Olam, and that in the, just like in Malchut, in Olam HaAsiyah, but even in Olam HaYetzirah, that the Shekhinah is more vulnerable to the Sitra Achra. And it's the same issue, that it's all about the righteous and the wicked, that our sins make the Shekhinah become vulnerable to the Sitra Achra. That she, in effect, lies down at the feet of the person who's carrying the negativity, and then the Sitra Achra can attack her. And I was thinking of it in terms of the soul memory work, how the negative issues that we carry almost are making holes in the aura, But when you were talking today about how Hashem, is becoming mechulal through our averot, it's the same concept in the Zohar of the accessibility, because the Shekhinah is closer to the lower levels, that she takes that on. And then in the Talmud too says the Shekhinah can't stay where it's polluted, or there's incest or violence.
And at the same time, Galu leBavel Shekhinah imahem.
Right,
Hashochin itam betoch tomotam.
Right.
So that's the issue. Yeah. But what you were saying about the 4 Shekhinahs is such an amazing statement that most of the people don't pay attention to, but it's in many Sforim talked about. And when I was talking about the Levushim, remember, on which level do you meet God. So the Shechina that you have in Bria is very much Shechina in mind,
Right.
so on and so forth. Yeah.
Right.
Well, wonderful.
Thank you.
Soll der Rebischte helfen, wir wollen unser Haus beten a good quittel. We should all get a chasima teve and for a good year, and that we should have good seichel to write in our hagahot in the script that comes from Min HaShamayim, what special things that we want. So, Omar,
Amen.
Amen.